The red, white, and blue. We Americans treasure our flag for what it represents, but some think the flag's as important as the cross. When it comes to being citizens of both heaven and earth, believers running the race of life need to keep first things first. Stand by for some flying sparks as Erwin Lutzer takes aim at those who equate old glory with the one place of true glory. Stay with us. From Chicago's Moody Church, this is Running to Win with Dr. Erwin Lutzer, whose clear teaching helps us make it across the finish line. With the second message in his series, Why the Cross Can Do What Politics Can't, here is Dr. Lutzer with The Cross and the Flag.
Today it's the cross and the flag. The cross and the flag. Let me begin by asking you a series of questions, if I might. Is the American dream the same as the Christian dream? And if not, how are they different? Let me put it differently. If America were to continue to be strong and prosperous and great, does that mean that the church would be strong and prosperous and great? Or to ask it differently, is support for tax breaks for families, term limits for congressmen, and support for the National Rifle Association, are those things Christian agendas? Some of us were in Israel recently and we visited the Golan Heights. In fact, you can't get to Caesarea Philippi without driving through the Golan Heights. If I remember correctly, our tour guide said that there, when the Golan Heights belonged to Syria, there were 6 million mines that the Syrians put on those hills. And Israel has only found 4 million of them. So if you ever go to Israel, I suggest that you not go backpacking on the Golan Heights. Choose somewhere else. But today we're going to take a walk on the Golan Heights and hopefully avoid all the mines. We're going to talk about church and state, God and government, cross and flag. And what I want you to do for this hike is to stay with me the whole way until we get to the top of the mountain, until we finish, because it may well be that as we're walking through, you may think that I'm stepping on a mine. But when you get to the end of the message, you might decide that it was only a firecracker. I want you to stay with me so that if anybody leaves this message, I might just stop and ask you, where in the world you think you're going? There was a pastor who did that, said to a man who was leaving, "Why are you leaving?" The man shouted, "I'm going to get a haircut." The pastor said, "Why didn't you get a haircut before you came in here?" He said, "Before I came in here, I didn't need one." So I want you to stay to the end, even if you really need a haircut when the service is over. And some of you do, by the way, as I look at you. One day the people came to Jesus to entrap him. It's in the 22nd chapter of Matthew. Pick it up at verse 15. They come to Jesus and they deliberately try to set a trap for him, and they ask him this question. They said, "Do you think it is lawful to give tax unto Caesar, to pay the poll tax or not?" What a trick question. It was a trick question because if Jesus were to say, "Yes, I think it is lawful," he would have incurred the wrath of the Jews who hated the idea of paying taxes. They didn't think it was lawful at all. They just did it because they had to. But if Jesus would have said, "No, I don't think it's lawful. We shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar," they'd have turned him in to the Roman authorities and he'd have been tried for speaking against the government, which in those days would have been a very, very serious offense. And so that's what they said to him. How was Jesus going to answer? Either way, he was trapped. Or was he? He said to them, "Give me a coin." So they fished around and they gave him a coin, and it was a denarius that was used to pay the poll tax. And he said, "Whose inscription is on this coin?" And they said, "Caesar's." Now you must understand how they hated that inscription. because they thought it was idolatry, for one thing, for a man to have his inscription put there on a coin, and for another, always bear in mind that Caesar, in the minds of those pagans, was considered to be God. So this was idolatry. They hated the tax, they hated the Romans, and they hated this currency. And Jesus looked at it and saw Caesar's imprint and said, well, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. What an answer. To my knowledge in history, and some of you historians can disprove this, but I don't think anyone ever said anything that comes close to that before. What Jesus was really saying is that it is possible to pay your dues to a pagan government, because remember, he said you should pay this poll tax, and how would the tax be used? Only to strengthen the hands of those Roman soldiers against the Jews, only to continue their slavery. But Jesus said you can go ahead and you can use and pay that poll tax, and you can do your obligation to this pagan government, while at the same time you can still pay your dues to God. You can do both, because these are separate kingdoms. Well, you know, the whole history of the Christian church revolves around the conflict between church and state. The early Christians argued in the Roman Empire that they could be good Roman citizens and still at the same time be Christians. They assumed that principle, but Rome disagreed, and Rome said if you want to be a good citizen of Rome, you must worship like the Romans and you must declare Caesar to be God. And if not, the lions were waiting. After the Christians came to power, and you've heard me tell this story many times, you'll probably hear it again sometime, but after the Christians came to power, they said, now, you have to worship with us if you want to be a good citizen of the Holy Roman Empire, which Voltaire says was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. But if you want to be a citizen of the Holy Roman Empire, you must believe like us too. And as the church grew in corruption, the true church was persecuted under the hand of, quote, Christians. But today we're talking about America, so we fast forward the VCR, and we pick it up as the pilgrims come to America. The pilgrims come for freedom of worship. Now, not freedom for everyone, mind you. The pilgrims never had that idea in mind. As a matter of fact, they were upset with people like William Rogers, who was a Baptist, because they saw